Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Kuf Yud Aleph 111 in Chullin. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. So, yesterday we concluded the day by noting that soaking liver in vinegar sears the liver, preventing it from releasing blood. And so, as we pick up with the second word on the 10th line of Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, Rav Papa shares his thoughts regarding the possible effect of the searing of the liver in vinegar. So, the Sava Rav Papa, Kamei de Rabba Lememar. So, Rav Papa thought to say in front of Rabba, Chala Aser, that the vinegar itself would become prohibited. Amarle, Rava responded though, Ichala Asir, if you're going to now say that the vinegar is prohibited because the blood that comes out is considered real blood. And so as a result, that blood is because it's real blood and we're not allowed to consume blood. So now the vinegar is prohibited. But now that the liver is no longer exuding or discharging blood, iunami aser, it also should be prohibited. Ki hechi dipalit hadar bala, because now that it is just as it's discharging, now it's reabsorbing. So take a look at Rashi. It is in the narrow lines of Rashi from the top of the narrow lines 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19, 20 lines down. Kihechi dipalid hadar bala, may oto chometz, from that same vinegar, atzmo, the kevan shenimtzmat, now that it has shrunk, it is contracted, so then the enu tarud livfloat and is no longer busy discharging choser ubola. So now it can go back and absorb that same blood. And so as a result, now you have to be concerned about that. But we know that in fact the liver itself is supposed to be kosher. And so because we know that the liver itself is supposed to be kosher, so we reject Rav Papa's conclusion, and in fact the vinegar that in which you would soak that liver would also be kosher to consume. It would not actually be prohibited. Rav Bar Shaba Iklo Lebei Rav Nachman. So we have now a story, two stories. The first story is Rav Bar Shaba visited Rav Nachman. Aitule Kabda Shlika. They gave him a slow cooked liver. Shlika is sort of like a very long, slow cooking. Here they define it as stewed. V'lo achal, he didn't eat it. Amrulay. So they told Rav Nachman, the people who were serving it told Rav Nachman, Bar Be Rav Dilgav Lo Achil. There's a Torah scholar, a son of a Torah scholar that is not eating what we gave him. Umanu, and who is he? Rab Bar Shaba. His name is Rab Bar Shaba. So Amr Lahu, Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman says to them, Gamu l'Shaba. Translated here as stuff it down his throat. And so, as Rashi tells us, Higmiuhu, feed it to him, stuff it to him. Ve'elidu l'shaba al karkov, give it to him with against his will. Al shem aviv karo, and it's sort of using a language that he's specifically calling him based on his father. That to some extent that we are our ancestors' descendants, and so that's the concept. There are those who suggest that maybe this is a play on other words, but that's beyond what we'll cover for today. So in any event, what was the basis for Rav Bar Shaba's perspective? Meaning, everything we've seen so far in the Gemara suggests that there's nothing wrong with doing what Rav Nachman's group did in feeding a stewed liver to a guest, meaning that the stewed liver should still be kosher. So Ketanai, actually, it's a machlokas Tanayim. Rabbi Eliezer Omer hakaved oseres ve'eno ne'eseres, that the liver can make other meat prohibited because the blood that comes out of it will cause the other meat to be prohibited. Ve'eno ne'eseres, but it's not going to become prohibited itself. Nimnei shepoletes ve'eno bolas, because as long as it is discharging, it is not going to absorb, and therefore it's not going to make things problematic. Rabbi Yishmael ben Oshel, Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Omer. So Rabbi Yishmael says, "Mitubelet oseret v'ne'eseret." If you season it, so then it's going to not only prohibit other things, but even it itself can become prohibited. And shaluk oseres v'ne'eseres. And if you stew it, if you cook it for a long time, it will not only cause other things to be prohibited as it exudes the blood, but it too will become prohibited, as Rashi explains. Ne'eseres, this is now up from the bottom of the narrow lines in Rashi, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, about 22 lines up. Ne'eseret, last word on the line. Lefi shela'achar shegamra leplei tasa. Because if you cook it for such a long time, it will eventually stop discharging blood. Choseres ubolas. And so now, once it stops discharging, it can now absorb. And so as a result, it will absorb the blood that it discharged and now become not kosher. So Rabba bar Rav Huna ikla lebe Rabba bar Rav Nachman. So another story. So Rabba bar Rav Huna was visiting the house of Rabba bar Rav Nachman. So aitu lekame tlos sabe tachai. So they brought in front of him 3 sa of smearings. So Rashi explains what exactly that is. Next Rashi. Tlos sabe tchoi, and it's probably good to keep your hand on Rashi because we'll do the next few. Shalosh sa in pas, 3 sa of bread. Nikiya, clean bread, meaning, essentially white bread, purified purified flour. Paneh tochen, with the face of it, tochen b'shemen udvash, that had smeared on it oil and honey. Sounds delicious. So Amaruhu, Rabba bar Rav Huna says to the group that's feeding, Mihavo yadiyata da'atina, did you know I was coming? This is such a beautiful feast. And obviously they must not have known. He must not have told them that he was coming. Right? So Amrulay, mi adifat lan mina, are you better than it? And so what does that exactly mean? Adifat lan mina, Rashi tells us, Yom HaShabbos haya. No, it's not because of you. It's because it's Shabbos and we're doing something really nice for Shabbos. Diksiv v'karasel Shabbos oneg. As it says in Yeshayahu, Perek Nun Chet, Pasuk Yud Gimel, that you shall proclaim Shabbos as a delight. And so as a result, the idea is that we should be having special foods on Shabbos. That's, of course, the custom that we have. Adahachi. So why is that? The whole story is not being brought because of that. But while this was all happening, Ashkachahu Kabda Dahava by Simpona de Bulia Dema. So he sees that they are now serving him some liver that had an artery in it that was filled with blood. So Amar Lahu, Amai Avidisu Haki. Why'd you do it this way? Rashi explains. Next Rashi, Mai Avidisu Haki. Afal Pisha Dam Hanivla Bo Heterhu. Even though the blood that's absorbed in the liver itself is considered permitted, Mihu Dam HaKanos Bisemponot, the blood that's in the arteries, that damhu, that's real blood. You cannot eat that. So you're now cooking this with real blood in it. That's not the way it should be done. That's not a good approach. So Amrulay, they said to him, Elahechinavit. So how should we have done it? So Amrlahu, Kiru Shasi ve'erev. So you're supposed to tear a cross tear, a vertical and horizontal tear. V'chitucha latakas, and then you turn the torn part, the cut part, down. So now when you roast it in that way, sort of hanging, everything will drain out and it will be kosher, because they basically would stick the thing that they were cooking into the top of the oven and it would hang there. And so as a result, any blood would just drip off of it into the bottom of the oven and go away. Or if they're roasting it on a spit, so then it would be, on top of the fire or near the fire. And so as a result, it would go away. All right, Vahani Mili Kavda, and that's the rule with respect. Oh, well, let's do Rashi. Rashi notes. Now we're in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 15 or 16 lines up in the narrow lines of Rashi. Maybe it's 14 lines up. V'chaticha l'tachat, chatucho lamata. Put the cut part to the bottom. Kishanas nuhu b'tanur, when you put it in the oven. Litzalot, in order for it to roast. Kedei shiazov adam v'yatza, so that the blood will flow out and leave it, and now it will be, and now you won't have any issue with having an artery filled with blood. So Vahani Mili Kavda, this all was talking about a liver. Aval Tchala, when it comes to the spleen, Shumna Ba'almahu, that the what looks to be like red and blood is actually just fat. Kihad Shmuel, as Shmuel would do, of dele tavshile d'tchale biyom oven milsa. They would prepare cooked spleen for him on a day that he would have something happen. Now, what is the have something happen? Well, that Rashi tells us. Ki oven milsa next. I'm sorry. Now it's Rashi 3, 6, 8 lines up in the narrow lines of Rashi. Hakaza, when they would do bloodletting. So as a result, apparently having this red fat of the spleen would be good for your health, if you were going to have your blood let. So Itmar. So now, having told these two stories, so the Gemara addresses roasting liver or an udder on a spit together with other meat. So Itmar, kavda ilave bisra shari. If you have a liver above ilave, above the other meat, it is going to be permitted if you cook it. And Rashi explains, kavda, next Rashi, kavda ilave bisra bitanur. If we're talking about cooking something in an oven. Hayutzolin, they're roasting it. Cold sli, any kind of roasting, shalahen, the chudo shel shapud taloi lamata. They would imagine a spit with a ring on it at one end. The pointy end is the other end. And so what you would do is you'd put the meat on the spit. You'd hang the ring at the top of the oven from a hook at the top of the oven. And now you would have hanging in the oven the piece of meat that you're trying to cook. And that would cook there. So that's how they would cook. And so Rashi continues, the chodo shel shaput taloi lamata, and so the pointy part of the spit would hang down to the bottom. V'kisha kaved natun chila, and so if you put the liver on the spit first, v'achar kach habasar, and then you put a piece of meat. Well, again, that means that the liver is closer to the circle, which is hanging at the top. Nimtza hakaved elyon. You'll see that the liver is above kishatolinoto when you hang it down. That's just the way math and physics works. That if you put something on and you hang it from the bottom, so then you're going to have the first thing that you put on at the top and the second thing at the bottom. And so as a result, that they said it was permitted. Now, why is it permitted? The answer is dama mishrak sharik, because the blood just slides. So dama mishrak sharik, afal pi shezav hakmina kaved, even though the blood will flow out of the liver, al habasar, onto the meat, ein bekach klum, you don't need to worry about it. Now, ordinarily, if you were cooking it in a pot or something like that, well, then you would need to worry about it. But here you don't need to worry about it. Lefish hadam al yedei tzli, because the blood, as a result of the whole roasting process, eino noach livla, it's not so easy to absorb it. Ela machlik v'nofel, rather it just slides right off and it falls off, and therefore it's not going to be a problem. So kachala ilave bisra aser. But if you have a kachala, a kachal, the udder is above meat, well, then it's going to be prohibited. So my timer, why is it prohibited? Shouldn't the milk that drains out of the udder similarly just slide off the meat underneath it as a result of the roasting process? No, that's not what happens. Chalav saruche masrich. The milk actually clings. And I don't know if you have any milk with fat in it. Certainly, that is the case. If you take a look at the sides of your a cup, you'll often see that there's some stickiness to the milk, as Rashi tells us. Misrach sarich nidvak. It attaches itself the nivla, and then it gets absorbed. So that was the first Y line in Rashi. So back into the Gemara. So Rav Dimi minarda masni ipcha. Rav Dimi taught the exact same rules, but taught it in the opposite direction. Meaning, as we go, the Gemara explains, kachala ilave bisra shari. That actually, when it comes to the udder, if it's above the piece of meat, well, then the meat is going to be permitted. My timer, why is it? Chalav shchuta derabanan, because the milk of a slaughtered animal is only prohibited rabbinically. The milk that was in the udder is only prohibited rabbinically, and so therefore we're going to treat that in a more lenient manner. Whereas kavda ilave bisra usar, if you have the liver above the meat, it would be prohibited. Why? Because dam d'oraisa, blood is prohibited biblically. So Darish Maramar. So Maramar said gave a drasha in which he taught the following halacha. Hilchasa. The halacha is bein kavda, bein kacha. Doesn't make a difference whether it's the liver or the other. Tuse bisra shari. If it's below the meat, it's permitted. Ilave bisra. The avid in lechatchila lo. So in the end, if it's above the meat, if either the udder or the liver are above the meat, you really shouldn't do that lechatchila. But post facto, if you did do it, well, then it is going to be okay. You can still eat it. Now Rashi notes that actually for us, we don't usually have a hanging spits. We have horizontal spits. And so as a result, we should, lechatchila, never have a liver and udder on the same spit as another piece of meat. As Rashi tells us, top line of Rashi, last Rashi on the Amud. Hilchasa, uladi done, asr legamri lechatchila. For us, it is completely prohibited ab initio, lechatchila, before the fact. You would not be allowed to set it up like that on purpose. Why? Lefisha shefudim shalanu einan tluyim, because our spits are not hanging. Elashochavos, they lie across. Upamim shemarim zanav hashapud v'nimtza hatachton elyon. Sometimes you'll, and often, my guess is their spits didn't have a definitive start and end. They probably were pointy on both sides. So that way you could pick it up on either end. And so as a result, if you're picking it up on either end, sometimes you'll pick it up from the pointy side. Upamim shemashpilo v'nimtza chavero elyon. And sometimes you'll pick it from the other side, and that side will be up. And so as a result, in the end, when you have a lying spit and a spit that is lying down, and you need to pick it up, and we don't have a system for always picking it up the same way, essentially, anytime you were to put either an udder or a liver on the same spit as a piece of meat, there will be a moment when you will, or there can be a moment when the udder or liver is above the meat. Hilkach bein kaveh litzad harosh ubein shu litzad hazanav asur. It doesn't make a difference whether the liver is towards the head of the spit or the point of the spit or the tip of the spit. Doesn't make a difference. We're not supposed to do it lechatchila. Okay, so the Gemara now tells us a related story. Rav Ashi Ikla Lebei Rami Bar Abba Chamuha. Rav Ashi goes to visit his father-in-law Rami bar Abba, and Chazyeh libre de Rami bar Abba, and he sees the son of Rami bar Abba, namely his brother-in-law, Deka, as we turn to Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Bet, Deka Shapid Kavda Ilave Bisra. He's putting a liver on the spit above the piece of meat. So Amar, he tells him, Kama Yahir Haimirabanan. Look how presumptuous this rabbi is. Amar, the Amar Rabbanan di Avad. The rabbis say that this is permitted b'di'eved, that post facto, that if you did it, then it's okay. L'chatchila miyamar, but did they say that it would be okay? L'chatchila, they did not, and so as a result, that is not the way we should act. We should only do it. We should never do it intentionally. But if we did it, then it can be eaten anyway. Okay, the ika beidugi. Now the Gemara qualifies the ability to roast the liver even if it's below the meat. Because if there was a beiduge, and Rashi tells us what is a beiduge, top line, end of the first line on Rashi and Kuf Yud Aleph and Bet, beiduge shenoslin kli lekabel hashuman. They put underneath the roasting meat a vessel to hold, some kind of plate or bowl to receive and to collect all of the fat that would drip off the meat that was roasting. Kederashanu, just like we do lavozim when it comes to geese. Vuhu nikra beidugi, and that's what it was called. B'lashon Arami, in Aramaic, it was called a beidugi. So as a result, if you have a beidugi, bisra ilava kabda nami aser. Even if the meat is above the liver, you're going to have a problem. Why are you going to have a problem? Rashi tells us, third line in the top of Rashi, on Kuf Yud Aleph Hamabet, Lefi shedam hakaved noteif l'toch habeidugi v'nimsa ochlo. The blood of the liver is going to drip into this beidugi that's collecting all of the fat, and you're going to end up eating from it. So the Gemara asks, Umayshna midama de bisra, but when second, we know that when it comes to regular pieces of meat, if you don't salt them and you just roast them, they're kosher, because that is a method of avoiding the process of getting rid of the blood. And yet, even in that situation, maybe we should say in that situation also, the roasting just a piece of meat is going to be problematic if you have a beidugi, because not only will the fat drip into that bowl, but also the blood that is going to be roasted out of the meat will drip into that bowl. So no, that's not going. Oh, and Rashi explains the question for us. Umayishna de brisra v'harei af dam habasar. Similarly, when it comes to the blood of regular meat, kishe'ein sham kaved, when there isn't even a liver there, zav im hashumin, it will flow. The blood of that meat will flow with the fat. Va'anu ochlenoto, and we'll eat it as well when it comes to if it gets caught in the beiduge. So maybe we should not allow the cooking of any meat with the beiduge. So dama de bisra. So back into the Gemara. So the Gemara says, last word on the fourth line. Dama de bisra shachan. No, when it comes to the blood of regular meat, it's shachan. It dwells. It basically settles into the bottom, as Rashi tells it. Well, and dama de kavda kape, and the blood of the liver floats. So we're going to now highlight what that means. So take a look at Rashi. Third line in the narrow lines of Rashi. Umishani, and the Gemara is answering. So the Gemara, Rashi adds that word to explain, that make clear that this is part of the answer, not part of the question. Dama de bisra shachan, that the blood of the meat will settle. Yored l'shuli hakli, it will go down to the very bottom of the vessel. Vashuman, whereas the fat, tzaf lamala, it can get scraped off above. umenichen, and will leave in the kli, l'tocha kli, mare admumit, whatever appears to be red, ushebishulim, that is at the bottom. And so as a result, that is why it's going to be kosher. Whereas the blood of the liver does not sink, according to the Gemara, and therefore will mix with the fat, and that's why it's going to be prohibited. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. So now we have two other rulings by Shmuel that relate to blood. Ruling number one, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Sakin sheshachat ba. If you have a knife that slaughtered an animal, Asur lachtok ba roseach. You're not allowed to use that knife to cut something that's boiling hot. Tsonein, if you cut something cold with it, Amrila ba'aya hadacha. Some people say that it requires rinsing because the fat from the knife that had absorbed some of the blood will have some kinds of fats on it that will then wipe off on the cold item, and so therefore the cold item requires rinsing. And some people say that no, it does not require rinsing. In general, we say that it does. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Ka'ara Shemalach Babasar. A second ruling in the name of Shmuel. If you have a plate in which you salted meat, and therefore the blood all got extracted and was there in the bowl with the salted liquid as a salty liquid, asur lechol baroseach. You can't eat hot food on that plate because that plate had absorbed some of the blood as a result of the salting, as we've seen previously. O Shmuel Taimei, and now we're quoting the statement. Shmuel follows his reasoning. To Amar Shmuel, Maliach harehu karoseach. When you salt something, it's like that item is very hot. Kavush, v'kavush, and when you pickle something, harehu k'mavushal. It's as if it was cooked. And so as a result, that's why this plate is going to be problematic. In general, we say that if when we apply this principle today, and we say that if you have something soaking in a liquid for 24 hours, it will effectively pickle that item, even if there's no. Even if that liquid is not, if it's just water, it's a bland liquid. But if you have something that's actually intended for pickling, well, then the pickling process will speed things up, and it's considered as if it's cooked in the same time that it would take to heat something up. So ki asa Ravin. So now Ravin came. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and he says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan when he came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Maliach eino karosech. He says that according to Rabbi Yochanan, when you salt something, it is not considered hot. V'kavush eino kimavushal. And when you pickle something, it's not cooked. So Amar Abaye, had Ravin leisa. This Ravin statement is not correct. So dahi pinka. Dahava Bay Rabbi Ami, because there was this pinka. Now, what is a pinka? So Rashi helps us out here, and Rashi tells us, where is it? Dahi pinka garcinan. This is now Rashi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 lines down. Dahi pinka garcinan. Kara. It is a plate, a shelcheres of pottery, she'ein la takana behagala, that once it absorbs something, there is no way to fix it by dipping it in boiling water, because we say that pottery cannot be kashered, and so as a result, that's the background. So demalach be bisra. So it was in the house of Rabbi Ami, and they used this earthenware plate in order to salt meat. The Tavre, and so it was broken. So they broke the plate afterwards because they can't use it for anything. Mifti, but now let's take a look. Rabbi Ami Talmud the Rabbi Yochanan Hava. Rabbi Ami was the Rabbi Yochanan student. So my time at Tavre, why did he break the plate? La mishum deshmiale minei de Rabbi Yochanan de Amar Miliach Harehu Karosech. It must be that it's because he heard Rabbi Yochanan say that when you salt things, it's like they are very hot. And so as a result, we reject Rabban's statement, and instead we say, as Shmuel notes, that when it comes to salted items or pickled items, it's as if they're hot and they are cooked. Yosef Rav Kahana Achua the Rav Yehuda Kamei de Rav Huna. So Rav Kahana, the brother of Rav Yehuda, was sitting in front of Rav Huna, the Yosef Kamar, and he was saying the following: Kara shemalach babasar. If you have a plate in which you've salted meat, asur lechal ba roseach. You can't have something hot in it, exactly like Shmuel taught us. Utznon shechatachu b'sakin. But and something more. This is the addition. If you have a radish that was cut with a knife, and we're talking about a knife that used to cut meat, mutter la'achlo bekutach. You're allowed to eat it with kutak. Kutak is a dairy dish. Let's take a look at Rashi. V'tzanon shechatcho b'sakin. So if you have a radish that was cut with a knife, Afal gaf. This is Rashi. This is the Rashi now from the top of the narrow lines of Rashi: 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, 25, 26 lines down. V'tsanun shechatchu b'sakin. If you have the radish that was cut with a knife, afal gaf the avigav chorfei ditsanun. Now, radishes are considered a very sharp food. Must be a different kind of radish than we usually have, but in any event, this radish is understood to have a sharpness to it. Igrish balaz, it's called that in French, Old French. Hu boleya mishmunis, it's going to absorb from the fat hasakin on the knife, hakarush alav, that is encrusted on it. Vahavi hai tsanun natina tam rishon. And so now this radish has been given an immediate taste of meat. Sharei bala iser mamish. So it's as if it absorbed the prohibited thing itself. Vahavi kabasar. And now it's just like meat. And yet, mutter la'ochlo. We say that you are allowed to eat it. La'oto tsanun. That same radish you're allowed to eat bekutach. You're allowed to have it with a dairy dish. Sheyesh bonus yobe chalb de chalba. It's got cheese in it. It's got milk in it. Kedemifarish taima. And we're going to explain why. The kaven shabala min hashamnunit the hete rabala. Now, first we're going to explain, like Abaye, that this was a permitted absorption. And we'll see exactly what it means. Two different viewpoints. So that's where the Gemara is going to go next. So back into the Gemara. And the Gemara asks, my taima. It's the last two words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 lines up from where the lines get wide. We now say, beginning the 12th line, Amar Abaye. Abaye answers. Here's why the meat is being, the radish is being treated differently and more permissively than the meat on which a plate was salted. Hi, heterabala. When it comes to the radish, it absorbed a meat flavor, but that meat flavor had nothing not kosher about it. Hi, isurabala. Whereas the plate absorbed something that was prohibited, namely the blood taste. So Amrle Rava says that reasoning doesn't hold up, because kibala hatera mayhave. Who cares if all it absorbed was something that was kosher? Sof hai hetera to asilide isurahu. It's going to, if you then put the radish into the kutach, it's going to be a permitted flavor that becomes prohibited. He's eating something that's prohibited. So that can't be the explanation. So as a result, Ela Amar Rava, hi efshar limatame, v'hai lo efshar limatame. I'll tell you why. When Rav Kahana taught that when it came to the plate in which the meat was salted, you're not allowed to eat anything hot on it. But when it came to the radish, you could even eat it with a dairy dish. Because when it comes to the radish, you could taste it and see and confirm that it doesn't have a meat flavor in it. And when it comes to the plate, the hot food that was put on the plate, you cannot taste it because it's prohibited. So Amarle Rav Papa said, 1 second, La Rava, Lutame, Kfela Arama. Well, 1 second, according to your reasoning, why not have a non-Jewish chef eat from it? Milo Tanya, the Masoret Hashas changes the Tanan to Tanya. Didn't we learn in a brisa, and we saw this brisa previously, Kedei Rishabishal Ba Basar Lo Yivashel Ba Chalav, that a pot in which one cooked meat, you cannot cook milk in it. V'im Bishel Benosein Tam. And if you ate it, well, then it will be what you cooked in it will be prohibited if the meat absorbed in the pot is puts a taste into the milk. Bishel Ba Truma. If you have a pot in which you cooked truma, lo yivashel b'chulin, you can't cook chulin in it. V'im bishel b'nosein tam, and if you cook chulin in it, well then it will be prohibited if the taste of the truma it goes into the chulin. B'amrinan, and we explained all of this. So that was the end of the brisa. We said about that brisa. Bishlama truma. When it comes to truma, we can understand how we deal with this situation and what it means to say that to ask whether it imparts taste. Because tam la kohen, a kohen can sample it and taste it. Elabasar b'chalav, my time la. But who can taste milk that was cooked in the meat pot? So that you can taste. V'amrat, and you're the one who told us. Amartlan litame kefela. You can have a chef eat it. So v'hachanami litame kefela. So also here have it tasted by a chef. And so as a result, that will work. So why shouldn't we be able to eat both the hot food that was put on the on the plate that was used to salt meat, and we should be able to have this radish? Because all we do is we get somebody to taste it, confirm that no taste has transferred into the new item, and now we'll be able to eat the item however we want. So no, Hakinami, you're absolutely right, Rabba responds. Ki kamina deleka kfela. When I said that we're explaining this situation of Rav Kahana's teaching, where we say a plate in which meat was salted and one can't eat hot food that was put on it, it's because there is no chef there to taste that hot food and confirm that it doesn't have any of the meat taste of the blood taste in it. Oh, and that's why you can't eat it at all. But when it comes to the tznon, when it comes to the radish, you can have you yourself can taste it before you dip it into the kutach. And if you don't taste any meat taste in it, well, then you can have it with the kutach. Okay, so now the Gemara discusses the related case. We're now dealing with secondary transfers of taste, because we had such a secondary transfer of taste in connection with the plate that on which the meat was salted. So Itmar dagim she'alu bakara. If you have a meat plate and you now put a hot fish on it, Rav Amar asur la'achlan bekutach. You're not allowed to eat that fish with kutach. And Rashi explains, asur la'achlan bekutach. Now we're from the bottom of the narrow lines in Rashi. We're counting up 9, 12, 15 lines up. Asur la'achlan bekutach lefisha basar notain behem tam. Because the meat gave a taste into the fish, and now the fish will taste like meat, and the meat tasting fish should not be eaten with dairy. And so as a result, you can't have it with kutach. Ushmuel Amar mutter la'achlan b'kutach. And Shmuel says, no, you absolutely can have it with kutach. Rav Amar also nosin l'tamhu. Rav says it's prohibited because there's a taste that was given to it. Ushmuel Amar mutter nosin tam bar nosin tamhu. It was not a direct conveyance of taste, as Rashi tells us. No saint tam bar no saint tam. It's the next Rashi. Im hayu mivushalim im basar mamish. If you had cooked the fish directly with meat, haya asur la'ochlan b'kutach. Well, then of course you can't have that fish that was cooked with meat with the dairy dish. Inami, or and in addition, modish shmuel she'asur la'echol chalav roteach b'kara. Or if you had on that plate that you cooked, that you had that was used for meat, if you have on that plate that was used to cook meat or to put hot meat on it, and you put boiling milk on it, well, now you have the direct taste of the meat going directly into the milk, the nosein tam rishon. So now you have a first level giving, but havi kabas or gumor. So as a result, that milk, it's as if there was direct meat giving taste into it. Aval karazu. But in this case, where you have the plate, hiatzma eina basar, it itself is not meat directly. Ella al yadei no saint tam. It's only giving taste to the fish. Ve'ena kabasar, and it itself is not like meat. And so as a result, when you now have this fish with dairy, it's totally okay. So v'hada Rav Lav b'feirish. Now, when it came to Rav's statement that you're not allowed to have this fish with kutach, he never said that explicitly. Ela miklala itmar. It was inferred from something. The Rav Iklul Abei Rav Shimi Bar Chia Bar Brei. So he had visited Rav Shimi, this Bar Chia, his grandson, Chash Be'enab, and he had, and Rav got an eye ache. Abdulay Shiafa Bitzah. So they made a Shiafa, an ointment, Bitzah, and Rashi tells us Bitzah is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up. Bitzah Kara. It's a plate. Basar Haki, at some later point, not too later, but at some point, Ramule Bishula Begava, they gave him a cooked dish on that plate. Time late time of Deshaifa, and he could taste the ointment. So Amr Yav Taima Kulihai, look how strong that taste is. And so Rashi says Kulihai, 1, 2, 3 lines up in the narrow lines of Rashi. Shechozav and Nosein Tam Bishul. It gave the ointment that was put on this plate, gave taste to the thing that was cooked, the cooked item that was put on the plate later. Uman Deshama, and the person who heard Rav make this statement, Savar, he thought, that it shows that what do you have? You have the ointment going into the plate, and the plate going into the cooked food, and so you have 2 degrees of separation, even though, and as a result, and the taste was really there. And so as a result, Nami the Baalma. And so the thought was that this same principle would happen in general. Velohi, but that is not a correct understanding. Shiny Hasam de Nefish Mirara Tfei. The reason that was that case is different is, and you can't necessarily learn from it, is because there it was very bitter. Now, notwithstanding the fact that we have disproved this proof of Rav believing that not Barnat, and again, not Barnat it stands for notain tam bar notain tam. Again, it goes into the plate and then out of the plate into the item. And the issue is that we have where it's now going to go to the 3rd degree, because now you're going to have the fish with the milk. And so he says that Rav says that that's problematic. And we've now tried to prove the source of Rav's statement. But even though we haven't proved the source of Rav's statements, take a look at Tosas, 3rd Tosas on Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Bet. Below he shiny hasam de nafish merare. Kolomer mikan ein lahochiach. You can't bring a proof to Rav's statement. Aval hu beferish amra kedemuchach basam. We're going to see in just a moment, because we're going to tell a story, that in fact Rav did in fact say that not barnat is usher. And here's the story. Rabbi Elazar Havakayim Kamei Demar Shmuel. Rabbi Elazar was standing in front of Shmuel. So they brought Shmuel this fish that was put on a meat plate, a hot fish on a meat plate. And even though the plate was fleishiks, he ate that fish with dairy. Yahav le velo achal. So so Shmuel offered some to Rabbi Elazar, but he didn't eat it. So Amar le l'Rabach yahivi le v'achal v'at lo achalt. 1 second, I gave to your teacher Rav, and he ate from it, and you're not going to eat from it. So Asla Kameh to Rav. So now Rabbi Lazar comes to Rav and says, Amr le Hadar Be Mar Mishmaite. Did you retract your teaching? No, Amr le Chasle Lizare da Abba Bar Abba Delispe Limidi Delo Sviralai. It would be terrible. It would never happen that Abba Bar Abba, I'm sorry, the child of Abba Bar Abba, because it turns out that Shmuel's father's name is Abba Bar Abba. That the child of Abba Bar Abba would ever give me something that that I think is not kosher. And Rashi explains. The lisbili midi de lo spherally and lo. This is second of the wide lines at the bottom of Rashi in the middle of the line. Lo hayu dvarim ma'olam. It never happened. So as a result, we see that in fact Rav really did say that not bar not is usher, even if we can't prove that he said so anywhere else. And even though we don't have an explicit statement of Rab that in fact he did so. Now, of course, you may be saying, I don't understand. How could, and the Rishonim struggle with this question, how could Shmuel say what he said? And so, given that Rav says that it never happened, so the Ritva suggests that Shmuel was just exaggerating. He was suggesting that he could have convinced Rav to eat it. The Maharashtam suggests that Rav didn't realize what Shmuel had done. And while Hashem generally doesn't allow righteous to eat not kosher, we follow the halacha as like Shmuel in this instance. And so this really was kosher. In any event, it's a troubling story no matter how you deal with it. So Rav Huna v'Rav Chia bar Ashi havu yasve. So you had Rav Huna and Rav Chia, another story that's going to deal with this not bar not question. They were sitting chad b'hai gisa Dimabara Surah, v'chad b'hai gisa Dimabara. They were sitting on opposite sides of the Surah River at a crossing. Lamar Aitule Dagim Sha'alu B'Kara V'Acha B'Chutach. One got a fish put on a hot meat plate, and he ate it with kutach. Lamar Aitule Te'enim V'Anavim B'Toch HaSuda. And the other one was brought figs and grapes during the meal. It must not have been a very wide river, by the way, because we're going to see that they were able to see each other, and how you figured out that it was a meat plate. I'm not exactly sure about that either. V'achol baruch, and he ate the figs and grapes during the meal, and he didn't make a separate bracha on them. And we generally say that you do need to make a separate bracha, as Rashi tells us, Te'enim v'anavim, lo asul liftan. Those kinds of things, the dates, I'm sorry, the figs and the grapes, they were not brought to spread on the bread. The kaimalan, and we say in Masechet Brachot, Daf Mem Aleph Amibet, Dvarim Habayim La'akar Asu, the things that come for after the meal, after you finish eating bread, kolomar, which means to say, haragim lavo la'achar su, the things that are regularly brought after the meal, tu'unim bracha, they require a blessing, bein lifneihem, bein la'achareim, both before you eat them and after you eat them. Afilu hevi'an b'toch hasuda, even if they then get brought in the middle of the meal. Dekevan de'enan liftan, because they are not intended to be spread on the bread. Eina pas potrasan, the bread itself, the blessings that you make on bread and the benching that you do not satisfy them. And so as a result, that's why you would have thought that the person who was brought the figs and grapes should have made a bracha. So Mar Amar Lechabre, so one said to the other, Yatma, orphan, meaning, as Rashi tells us, last words on Rashi on the daf, below das, you must not have much knowledge. Because Avad Rabba Kachi, did your teacher do this? Umar Amar Lechabre, and the other one said, Yatma Avad Rabba Kachi, the same words. Did your teacher do this? So Mar Amar Lechabre, so the one who ate the fish with kutach said, Ana kishmuel spherally, I hold like Shmuel. Umar Amar Lechabre, and the other one said, Ana kaRabbi Chia spherally, I hold like Rabbi Chia. Did Tani Rabbi Chia? Pas poteres b'kol minei machal, that bread fulfills the obligation, making blessings on bread fulfills the obligation for all kinds of fruit and foods, if they're eaten during the meal. V'yayin poter kol mine mashkin. And similarly, wine, the blessings on wine will fulfill the blessings on all kinds of drinks. And so as a result, now the Gemara concludes by telling us one more story. You know what? Maybe we'll pause there and we will pick up from with the halacha of that Chizkiah teaches us, God willing, tomorrow. Wishing everybody a wonderful, wonderful day. Looking forward to continuing our learning tomorrow.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
How's the weather tomorrow?
We'll take a look.